Hello, everyone. This is Charles Laughlin. I'm host of Above the Cloud, a new podcast from the Local Search Association and the Tech Adoption Index. It's all about the small business shift to the cloud. So what are we doing here? If you give us 25 minutes of your time, we promise we'll give you at least a couple of ideas that you can use in your business. Whether those are data points that you can use to check against your own business performance or best practices, or even some inspirational ideas from the industry thought leaders we're going to bring on the show. These conversations, we're going to try to keep them light and fun, but we're going to try to keep them serious and practical and actionable. So if we're not delivering that, send me an email saying, hey man, you got to up your game. So today we're going to talk to my colleague Neal Polachek about some issues in the industry, and then we're going to talk to Jackie Cook from Vendasta about their new churn report. Let's cue the royalty-free music, and let's pay a few bills, and let's get on with today's podcast. This edition of Above the Cloud is brought to you by Boostability. Boostability is an online marketing service provider that has devoted its mission to helping small businesses compete online. Over its 9-year history, the company has become one of the largest, most highly rated, affordable digital marketing services providers in the world. They provide SEO, social media, and website services designed and priced with SMBs in mind. Boostability primarily works with partners that offer their white-labeled services to their small business clients. For more information, visit Boostability, BOOSTABILITY.com. Okay, hey Neal, how's it going?
Good morning, Charles. How are you?
I'm doing great. So welcome to the new podcast. So we're working on the second episode now. It's very exciting. We're above the cloud right now. A couple things going on. Just came across this study from QuickBooks about AI and how it's being used in automating accounting. So why don't you talk a little about what they found, and we'll see if it means anything bigger.
I think they didn't survey that many small businesses. Mm-hmm. I think it was like 500 or 600. Mm-hmm. I think everybody's looking to see how to apply all this machine learning down market to the SMB market. I think one of the items they cite is that increasingly they at QuickBooks are using AI to automatically categorize something. Right. Now that's an early stage use of machine learning. It's not unlike where if you start to type into your text thing, it comes up with some suggested stuff.
Early days.
Yeah, early days. I thought what was interesting was that of those who are using it, they're using it in finance, marketing, sales, customer service, operations, sort of across the line. Mm-hmm. But I think that I think it's really early stage in all those cases. Yeah. I think where we're going to see real opportunity is if you think about the small business market, lots of their costs are in labor. Lots of that labor can be flighty. Right. The reception person who is here today, gone tomorrow. You got to train them. You got to retrain them.
It's the bane of every small business owner's existence.
And so if you can start to apply some interesting technology to that role and free up people to do estimates, to do more high value activities, then I think there's really a tremendous opportunity. But I think that's still a year, 18 months off.
Will small business software be the implementer of a lot of these AI applications that end up sort of playing the role that's currently played by a highly trained professional?
Well, and it's no different, Charles, than what we found in our survey, that the use of cloud stuff, it's all driven by the promise, let's say, of freeing up people's time.
Right, to do more high value.
Time is the most precious currency besides money in the small business world. It's usually time.
Yeah. And, well, anyway, yeah.
And so anything that frees up time in that space, what people, business owners will consider.
So let's move on to something else. You and I are running this Tech Adoption Index program, which is all about sort of understanding the small business software world and understanding specifically how small businesses are moving to the cloud and, at what pace and why and so on. But we're also trying to find, other pain points to be a part of the solution for among companies in this space. And metrics driving KPIs that drive the business is a question we get asked a lot when we talk to people and say, what could we do that would be valuable? And so we're starting to do some work around that. And why don't you talk a little bit about at least where we're starting and what we're thinking about?
So, I think one of the big metrics, key metrics in this whole SaaS cloud world is what's known as CAC, or customer acquisition costs.
Right.
You search online for that, you'll get hundreds of posts about different ways to calculate it. I think in its essence is, how much does it cost you to acquire a new customer?
And how much does it really cost you?
And how much does it really cost you?
Yeah.
You'll find some businesses, some SaaS companies that exclude things and don't fully load that number. If you don't fully load that number, and let's say you think your CAC is X, but it's X plus Y, and you're building your business model on that unloaded CAC, you're going to run out of money. I mean, that's sort of what happens.
Is that done knowingly or unknowingly? Maybe I'm.
I think in some cases it's done unknowingly. I think in other cases it's done knowingly because the business model otherwise wouldn't work.
Right.
So, and it also is experience-based. I mean, a SaaS company that starts out selling to small businesses doesn't really know their CAC for a while.
Right.
So they might say it's going to be 800 and sort of guess that early stage. But then as they, roll out their go to market, they start to invest in maybe they're investing in SEM or SEO. All that stuff has to be included in that CAC.
Yeah.
So
all the marketing costs, everything.
All the marketing costs, salaries, all the sales costs. But then you might leave out, let's say you're using Salesforce.com and you're using a couple other SaaS tools. If you don't include those in your CAC, you're going to miss the mark as well. So it's a pretty fully loaded, sales, salaries, tools, marketing, and advertising spend that you got to crank into that.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, so I sent a few notes out to people, and what I discovered is that that CAC generally comes in around somewhere between, and it's a wide range, $1,200 and $1,600. But some companies have a much lower CAC depending on their business model. So one of the things we'll be doing as we sort of discovered more around this is think about it from CAC, sort of what are the guideposts around CAC for where there's a monthly recurring spend on the part of the customer, and you're going direct. That's one model. There might
direct
be
sales.
There might be another one where we look at that for indirect sales. Then there might be one where we look at it where the business model is not a monthly subscription model, but it might be a volume-based model.
Right.
In terms of either transactions or invoices or things like that. So there are a lot of ways to calculate it, but I put a number out there, pushed it to a number of people, came back, within that sort of 1,200, 1,600. If you are selling a monthly subscription in the range of $75 to $200, that number works. Of course, there
are other metrics that make that CAC good or bad, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So there are really three. There's CAC, there's churn, and there's lifetime value or average customer value. Right. Those are the three metrics that all these SaaS businesses have to look at and have to keep in mind. So, and it is simple math to know which of those have to go up or down depending on the direction of the other ones. I think where it gets more complicated is doing, how do you identify your true CAC? What expenses do you put in there? Which do you leave out? What's your true customer value?
Right.
What's your true churn? So those things all are more complicated to calculate in any startup or SaaS business. But once you start to figure out how to calculate those, those three are what matters.
Right. And what we've seen is that while there's plenty of, or at least a reasonable amount of, just general SaaS data out there, performance data and keep KPIs to benchmark against, there really hasn't been anything in the specific to the SMB SaaS world, which is a unique view. So if you apply just general SaaS metrics to this, it's not going to necessarily be very instructive. So
No.
what we're trying to do is get at the SMB
Yeah,
space specifically.
that's right, because there's a lot of information out there. SaaStr,
Right.
there's a key bank, Pacific Crest. They do a whole big study about SaaS metrics. There's tons of metrics out there. What I don't see out there in the same volume are metrics, these same metrics around those companies that have SMBs as their primary target or customer target.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do, is discover the CAC, the average customer value, the churn numbers for those companies that sell a SaaS or subscription model, or even a transaction model to the small business market.
Right, right. So the process from here is we're going to, take these sort of ranges that we've come up with and have more conversations and do more refinement. And we're also going to, as you were saying, kind of bucket these out into different business models so that the CAC for a MRR type business is not going to be benchmarked against a CAC for a volume-based business or something in a vertical where the metrics are going to be quite different. And
exactly,
that MRR number would not be instructive. So yeah, it's going to be a process, but I think we've gotten off to a good start, and we're going to refine this over time and start publishing out our findings, I think, to help this community understand this business. Neal, thanks. Good chatting as always, and we'll be back next week.
Okay, Charles. Talk to you later.
Great. Thanks. This edition of Above the Cloud is brought to you by Mono Solutions. Mono Solutions provides a SaaS-based platform for professional and data-driven SMB website solutions at scale. Mono enables digital service providers to deliver high-quality, do-it-for-me websites efficiently and affordably in order to empower small businesses to succeed across the digital landscape. Hello, Jackie. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Great. So Vendasta recently came out with its churn report. I guess you mined data from 100,000 customers to come up with some insights on what drives retention. Why don't you just tell us really quickly, kind of high level, why you did this, and then we'll get into and maybe just a little bit about methodology, and then we'll get into some of the findings.
Sure, absolutely. So that's absolutely right. We took a look at 100,000 businesses across 2 years. So we did sort of a longitudinal survivor analysis, and we had a bunch of hypotheses going into the study. Stuff that we knew in our gut, some were proven, some were disproven, on what we thought kept customers around. And so the reason we dove into this really is Vendasta's model is entirely a partner-based model. So what that means is if our partners are churning, we're churning. If our partners are growing, we grow as well. And so it was a challenge out to the entire organization. How do we help our partners not just decrease churn, but actually expand and create expansion revenue through additional services, and what relationships exist within that?
Okay. So let's maybe I'll ask the first question this way. You said what were some of the things that you expected to be churn drivers that didn't, or retention drivers or churn drivers, two sides of the same coin, right? What didn't rise to the top that you thought should have been there? Like the things that conventional wisdom would suggest are factors that really didn't show up on the radar.
Yeah, well, we sought out to look at go-to-market strategy and service model. That was one thing we didn't actually include in the study, but we'll probably be doing a bit of a follow-up on as we dive deeper. One of the aspects we looked at is how do our partners service their customers after the sale is made. So in our world, we call it, is it DIY, do it for me, or a combination sort of a do it with me approach.
Right.
There were some advocates on the DIY is going to be the highest churners because businesses are busy, they don't have time to do it. And there were others that said, no, at these higher price packages, that's what's going to create churn. And so we didn't have a strong analysis on either. We saw many variables that worked in a DIY setting that kept customers around. Some of our most active users were on a DIY level, which blew the other people away.
Right.
Likewise, we saw a ton of retention around some customers that really focus and target a niche and provide a full service solution with very low engagement but high retention rates. We're diving deeper into those models.
Okay, so no real conclusions around price or service model.
Not yet, but
yeah. To come. So let's talk about what it did find, and there's several things there. We can maybe walk through them each very quickly. One was the sales approach, and then there's a whole conversation around the stack.
So really, we started off the study with 3 hypotheses, or our thesis behind all of this. One is sell customers what they need. These are things that we sort of knew in our gut, but wanted to see if the data actually showed that. So one is sell customers what they need, obviously. 2 is invite customers to participate. These all sound like very straightforward things, but our partners go to market in very different ways, and some are very adamant that no participation is required. And then 3
are some selling based on this is not going to require anything of you? Is that
just set it and forget it and we'll take care of it?
Right. Okay. And you're saying that doesn't work?
It doesn't work across the board uniformly. For some, it does really work, but I'll tell you a little bit about what the data showed us anyways. And then the last is be the single trusted provider. That is really what we aim to at Vendasta empower our partners to be, as we've seen in other studies such as yours.
Right.
SMBs don't necessarily want a website guy, an SEO gal, a PPC. They want a single trusted provider, and they want to hang their hat on the fact that I get to run my business and be an expert in running my business, but I get to outsource some of these other functions to someone who I trust holistically across all my marketing needs.
Okay.
So we can dive deeper into any one of them.
Yeah, well, let's go to the full stack one, because again, we've done some research on this, and we've done a lot of thinking around it, and we've talked to a lot of people about this, so we've gotten a range of opinions on, what does the full stack really mean, and what I got from reading this and from hearing you talk, what I took away is you should have the full stack, but it's not necessarily important that you're penetrating all the way into the stack, but that it's there, and that you have an opportunity to offer these things when those needs arise. That's more the argument than selling people 10 things if there's 10 things in the suite.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Now, I don't want this message to be conflated with buy all the things, sell all the things. You want to buy a watch, I've got 20 watches to sell.
Right.
This can't be a product dump, right?
Right.
And that's what the risk is, falling victim to just keep dumping more product. No, that's not the message. What instead we saw was when a customer needs something, they come to you, that you're top of mind, your brand is top of mind, and that you're able to provide them whatever they need based on that need set. So it's the difference between sort of pushing products and addressing solutions when problems arise, and being that provider to address those solutions.
Again, we've talked to a lot of folks about this, and when we had GoDaddy at our conference last year, at our Tech Adoption Conference, and the observation she shared was that they do really well with the sort of those products that are very adjacent to the one core product that they offer, which is domains. And the things that are very adjacent to domains, they fill that stack out very quickly. It's when the customer's needs change into areas that are further away from sort of that core reason for being that GoDaddy has, that's when they start to drift off to other partners, to other providers. Yes. I don't know if you observe the same thing or how you address that.
Yeah, it's really what your brand is sold as well. GoDaddy is positioned in its branding as the website experts, and that's how businesses know them in the market. So naturally, we're going to go to GoDaddy for things, websites and things.
Right. But once you get into CRM, then you're starting to drift away a bit. So that's the challenge. Which how far afield does the stack go, I guess? For
sure, and it's really. I think what we've seen with a lot of our partners, especially in the traditional media space, is: are you an advertising expert? Are you, someone that's going to drive eyeballs, or are you a marketing expert and someone that can look holistically across finding their customers, understanding how their customers find them in a digital world, and then applying the right solutions and tactics to build out whatever their need is. If it's a new business, you're going to employ different tactics than if it's a mature business that's looking to grow or shift some of its customer segment.
Right.
So what we work with our partners in is, how are you positioning your brand in the marketplace? How are you constantly keeping that brand top of mind through email campaigns or driving them into an engaged center so that they don't just think of you as somewhere I can buy ads from. It's, no, I trust this person and I know that they understand holistically my marketing needs and they can recommend solutions because I don't have the time to understand that myself.
Right. And you made a big point about integration as well in your talk in April, I believe. The idea that if the apps aren't integrated and there's not a single view of the performance across all of the tools, then you're just offering independent. The importance of integration, I guess you sort of made a big point about that in April.
Yeah, it's integration, but it's experience. I don't.
Yeah.
The user have time to navigate. I don't want to go into an app store. I want what's working, what's not working. What do I need to know? It's the difference between allow me to see products and navigate and try to crunch what's going down in products. Allow me to see what's going on in my business. So it's an experience. We want to provide these local businesses. Here's what's going on with your customers and the way that they're finding you, where they're running into hiccups, and you can address that. Here's what's happening in your online reputation, in your website and stuff. So it's much more of a business intelligence conversation about how their business is operating, less so about here's a bunch of apps that are sending data signals. You need to learn all of them.
Okay, quick shift gears. There's a couple other major points in here, and one was the idea of engagement and frequency and type of engagement and how that drives. Talk a little bit about how that drives retention. We all assume more engagement equals better retention, but there's some more specifics to how it should be done, right? That you've gleaned from your research.
Yeah, for sure. So engagement, it's important to understand the definition of engagement. By engagement, I challenge our product teams all the time. Is engagement logins? Engagement is not logins, not just logins. Logins is a form of engagement, but if you're asking someone to log into your system and spend time on that system, and the more time they're in that system, the better your system is providing them. It's not necessarily relevant or exactly one-to-one with the value.
You don't know if they're enjoying that time or if they're getting anything out of it.
10 minutes trying to do one function that I wanted to do in 10 seconds, right?
Right.
So when we look at engagement, we look at things like, are they reading emails? Are they engaging with their report? Are they taking some type of action in the product? Are they navigating? Are they sending an email? So it's are they deriving value from the system? So many points of engagement is the first part, and then the frequency in which that engagement happens. So we looked at customers that rarely engage, if ever, those that engage once per month, those that engage once per week, and then those that engage on a daily basis. We thought it was going to be pretty strong, or some type of correlation, or some type of some pattern to show that engagement does increase retention, but we're blown away at how much retention is driven.
Can you illustrate it with just a little bit of some numbers, or at least in general terms? Yeah.
To summarize it, and I encourage you to read the full study.
Yes, of course.
But customers who engage early have, and so what we mean by that is when they're engaging 5 times in the first month, it's crucial. That is when we found the magic number was 5 and the magic time frame was a month. We knew, or we saw, that they had a 20% increase retention rate over those that didn't. So that was so get your customers to some way engage, activate right upon initial onboarding. Onboarding's nothing new. We've known that for a while. But the frequency in which they engage, if you can get your customers to engage either through a report, which you send them on a weekly basis, an email that suggests content or strategy on how to improve their marketing, if you can do that once per week, we saw a 28% increase in engagement over those that were not engaged on a weekly basis.
Okay, now the other question is, how often were folks, how common is that best practice being implemented, I guess is one way to ask it.
How common is that?
Well, if that best practice is weekly engagement of the level that you're describing, how many of your partners were doing that? And in other words, is there a very big opportunity for improvement because it's not being done, or is that a fairly standard best practice, or kind of where on the spectrum does that sit?
Yeah, so the engagement that Vendasta provides is we have instant alerts. So when something's going on, we let them know. We have daily digests, we have weekly reports, and then we have monthly reports. So partners can opt in or opt out. Users can opt in and opt out to any one of those. Our most common, everyone's on the monthly report. Most regularly. Some are on weekly. We don't see as much engagement on the weekly because oftentimes the users like to kind of sit back and say what's going on, or our partners will want to kind of hand deliver these reports to them and say, here's the value that I provided in that time period. But when we see that engagement on a daily basis, those engaged users that are reading their email alerts when a social post comes in or a review comes in or a listing is corrected, those are the most engaged users, and those are the ones where the retention rate is very, very high. And that's, correlation, causation, but they're hyper-engaged users, and they're not even logging into the system in many cases. They're just looking at the value through their phone and actioning on it when it's important.
Yeah. So is there anything a lot of this we're talking about is things that are done after the sale. What about the actual nature of the sale itself? Is there anything that you found about how the product is sold that drives retention? Or is it all sort of after the sale?
So there's two things, one before the sale and then one after the sale that both has to do with sales. And it really relates to that first one, sell customers what they need. And so through Vendasta's snapshot report, we give a really quick analysis of what a customer needs. We pull together a whole bunch of data across the web and we categorize it. Is it a listings problem they have, a reputation, a social problem, maybe websites and conversion? We just give them a grade on each. And it's really just an indicator for a salesperson or a client to focus and say, hey, here's where we need to start. People are eyeballs or they're falling out of the funnel in this stage. And so when we looked at the data on, okay, how many clients were, let's say, sold a social package when they had a failing social score, compared to those that weren't. And the data that you'll see in the report, that specific unit, when they were sold a social package when they needed it, the difference in retention was 30%. And so sometimes our partners have spiffs or have focuses that are like, no, we need to hit website targets.
Even if their websites aren't the problem.
That's not the problem. It is a needs-based selling approach, and not to say that websites aren't important, but if it's not really what the client needs, it's harder to show value on that 30-day marker on that quarterly basis when you go back and say, here's what I did for your business and the impact. The second piece to that is that needs change and needs evolve, right? Often what we'll see, and we'll hear feedback from our partners, is the client said they insisted they had a poor reputation problem. They needed reputation management. We sold them reputation management, but they were only ready to engage on a DIY level. They didn't have the budget. They had more time than money. They wanted to do it on a DIY basis. Well, often what happens is the DIY becomes the freemium upsell or the low tier upsell to get to a more managed service. Because what a client will see is, wow, I had no idea how many reviews I actually had about my business across the web. I recognize the need now for these past 30 days, and I need a little bit of help managing this because I know real time firsthand what's going on with my online reputation. And so it's really important. We saw that contrary to what I was expecting to see, which an upsell would actually either decrease retention or in some way have some flatlining effect. An upsell afterwards actually increased retention in a pretty meaningful way. And it was because it was from our partners that were going back and revisiting the need and how that need was being addressed. They found new opportunities for solving an unknown need.
Yeah. So either pre-sale or post-sale, just sell them what they need. Very simple.
Sell what they need. And needs evolve. And needs change.
Sure. And understand that, right? Thanks, Jackie. That was a lot of fun. And thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, Charles. Talk to you soon.